welcome to Legalese. My name is Vince Perryman and I'm a local attorney with the law offices of Vincent Perryman. Each month, Legalese focuses on a wide range of legal issues and topics. Today's show covers tax debts in bankruptcy. Joining us now is attorney Bruce Ralston of Memphis BankruptcyLawyer.com. Bruce, thanks for being with us today.
Glad to be here. Thanks for having me.
And, in the Mid-South, a big topic is always bankruptcy and things of that nature. And I think one of the most misconceived notions about bankruptcy is what you can and can't do with tax debts. So I think there's a lot of basics of bankruptcy that we probably need to kind of talk about first and then get more focused.
Right. There are a couple of basic concepts that you have to understand before you can really continue the conversation at all. And to start at the beginning, there are two primary reasons that people file bankruptcy, and that is the automatic stay and the discharge. The automatic stay is an injunction that happens automatically at the beginning of the case, which stops anything from happening, even stops the IRS from bothering you, stops foreclosures, garnishments. When you see the commercials on TV, stop foreclosures, stop garnishments, that's what they're talking about, is the automatic stay. The discharge is a separate injunction that is imposed at the end of most cases, not every time, but for our purposes, let's say it's almost every time. At the end of the case, there's a discharge. The discharge is a permanent injunction, which all it really says to creditors is don't bother this person. Mm-hmm. And people try to overinterpret it and think it means more than it does, or it affects property rights. It doesn't. All it is an injunction against bothering this person about this debt. End of that conversation. Mm-hmm. And then when you get into this kind of situation, you also have to be aware of the different categories of debts. And most people are at least generally aware of the basic categories of debt. We have secured debts, which are mortgages, car loans, and tax liens are secured debts. And then we have general unsecured debts, which are mostly credit cards, medical bills, personal loans, deficiencies on things that have already been repossessed and foreclosed, and some income taxes fall into the category of general unsecured debt. Mm-hmm. And then there is unsecured priority. And there's a long list of things that technically are unsecured priority, but for most practical purposes, most of my clients, it's taxes and child support. Mm-hmm. And so you've seen here that taxes fall into all three of these categories, or at least potentially so. Mm-hmm. So you have to be aware of all these, and and this is one of the components of the analysis that you have to get into when you're determining whether somebody should file bankruptcy, or how it might affect their tax debt, and what the outcome might be, also how much it might cost. And then there's also the estate. I find that when you talk about the bankruptcy estate, people look at you with this, what are you talking about? But everybody pretty well understands the concept of a probate estate. Mm-hmm. When somebody passes away, everything that they own and everything that they owe becomes a separate estate. Mm-hmm. And bankruptcy is exactly the same concept. When you file a bankruptcy, then everything that you own and everything that you owe becomes a separate estate. It's almost like a corporation. It's a separate entity, and it's governed by its own little set of rules. And one of the most important concepts is what is property of the bankruptcy estate. I could talk for hours about that, but let's just stick with that for the moment. Mm-hmm. So now, do you have a particular example of a tax situation that you might want to pick apart a little bit?
Well, sure. So in tax situations, when somebody has a tax debt out there, initially there's a statutory lien. But then if it stays out there long enough, the IRS will say, hey, well, we're going to file a paper lien as well. Right. So if you've got someone, I guess the question is someone owes taxes.
How do you figure that out? How do you know? What does your client really know? Usually not much, okay? I mean, they've got some letters in the mail, the certified mail, and half the time they're bringing them to your office unopened. Mm-hmm. And well, I figured there's no point in me opening it anyway, so here, have at it. I've often said, trust your clients, but just don't trust their memory or their knowledge about the bankruptcy. So what do you do? There is a method for actually getting really good information, and that's ordering account transcripts from the IRS. Mm-hmm. And of course, there's different kinds of transcripts, and in bankruptcy, usually when we're talking about a transcript, we're talking about a return transcript, which is just a subset of the numbers of the tax return that you actually filed, and that's all. And there's also a wage and income transcript, which can be helpful for people who haven't filed tax returns in the past and they need to catch mm-hmm. up and file back returns. That's good information directly from the IRS. But this is an account transcript. It's for every individual tax year. There's a separate transcript, and attorneys, accountants have special dispensation to contact the IRS directly. There's a special hotline number, and you can order. You have to fill out the power of attorney, or I like to do the 8821. It's a very limited power of attorney, because I don't want to be that person's lawyer forever and ever. I just want to say, give me some information, and that's all. And you call the IRS hotline, and this often surprises people that the IRS can be very practical and very helpful and very friendly in some of these ways. They're still going to ask all the questions, and I always call it the McDonald's syndrome. The kid at McDonald's has to ask, do you want fries with that? He doesn't care about your answer. He just is required to ask that question in order to have the job. Same thing with these people at the IRS. They're going to ask, where does he have his where do he have his bank account? Does he still work here? What's his phone number? If you have the information and you want to give it to them, fine. If not, just say, I don't have that right now. Right. And they've asked the question, they keep their job. But they will send you tax transcripts, account transcripts, which have a great amount of detail in them. They're not perfectly written, and we all have our own languages that we speak in our own little groups, and the IRS is no different. They have terms that they use which to us out in the real world mean one thing, but to them mean something entirely different. And you have to kind of speak their lingo a little bit. But transcripts are the kind of thing that most people, if you read it through 2 or 3 times, it starts making sense, and you get the pattern, and you can understand what they're saying. And there's a great deal of information. If there has been a tax lien registered, that a tax lien has been registered. When it's been registered, which the timing can be very important on this. You don't know where it's been registered. It doesn't say that there. But again, you can call them back and ask. Often they will have that information, and they can tell you. So you put these pieces together one by one, and you decide, is there a tax lien? If so, to what does the lien attach? Because a tax lien by itself is just like any other lien. It only has value up to the point of property that this person owns. And so you get into that analysis. If I have a house that I own outright, then the tax lien might be quite valuable. If I have a house like most of my clients, where mortgage is upside down, the tax lien as to the house is irrelevant. And then we have to get into all their other property, their car, their furniture, appliances. And some people do and some people don't. And so you have to consider that. Then we get into how old the tax debt is. And that's the next part of the analysis I want to get into, the basic structure, the 1, 2, 3 ABC of how you start thinking about discharging taxes in bankruptcy, or dealing with them anyway.
And figuring out exactly how that works. And it's really interesting to me because I've got a LLM in taxation, and I remember sitting in the classes, anytime we asked a tax professor something about bankruptcy, they're like, we know nothing about that. We leave it to the bankruptcy professionals. And that was out in Seattle, and then I come back here, and I'm sitting through a bankruptcy CLE all day one time because there was somebody that was going to discuss discharge of taxation in it. And it was really interesting. What I started learning was that in Memphis, the guys that know this are the bankruptcy attorneys, and they deal with the IRS on a regular basis. So we'll get more into that when we return, when we continue our discussion on tax debts and bankruptcy. Please stay with us.